and I'm an Army veteran. I joined the military when I was 18 years old, and I served for 13 years. First as a combat medic, and later on as a human resources manager. Currently, I co-own a small business with my husband, Alex. He's also a military veteran. We have 3 children, Melody, John, and Milady. Melody and John are college students, and Milady, she just sang the national anthem. She's a junior in high school. A badass Army wife. Some people think that being in the military is hard. Well, it is. How do I know? Because I served in the military for 13 long years. And I know how demanding that job is. But do you know what else is even harder? Being a military wife. Being a military wife comes without a title, without a rank, without the training, and most of all, without the brotherhood that accompanies the life of a soldier. And that, my friends, is not a very easy pill to swallow. Out of all the jobs that I have done in my life, and believe me when I say that I have had my share of hard jobs, being a military wife has been by far the hardest one. I still remember when I became a military wife 21 years ago. By the time I became Mrs. Morales, I was already a soldier that I had been trained to kill, trained to go to war, trained to survive in the most difficult situations, and mostly trained to save lives. Yes, I was trained to be a combat medic in the military, and I enjoyed every single minute of it. But one thing the military never trained me for was to become a military wife, which I started doing when I was only 20 years old. I have a friend who asked me one time how it felt to be a military wife. When she asked me that question, I realized that as much as I wanted to tell her how I felt, I did not have the words to express all I wanted to say. I froze. And after a while, she changed the topic, and I never got the chance to answer her questions. But now that I think about it, I do have an answer to her question. Military wives come from all backgrounds, and most of us characterize ourselves as strong individuals who are capable of running a household by ourselves and are used to make miracles out of nowhere. You may be thinking, what's wrong with that? Well, let me tell you. Have you ever been put in a position where being strong is the only choice you have, even when the entire world is crumbling on top of you? That's what military wives do every single day. And the difference between our soldiers and us is that we don't get trained for such a challenging job. They do. We're just expected to perform the job and drive on. As a soldier, I had many great experiences, as well as some challenging ones. But none of them could compare to what I was living at home as an Army wife. There were many times when my husband was overseas when I questioned my commitment to the military. And no, I do not mean my commitment as a soldier. I question my commitment as an Army wife. Those 18 months that my husband spent in West Africa were the longest 18 months of my life. At that time, I was not only serving 2 years CONUS mobilization with the Special Operation Command South in Homestead, Florida, but I was also the sole caregiver of three kids. Kids who needed my full attention and support, but who also used to go to bed every single night crying because they did not know if their dad was going to come home again. How did I survive those 18 months under those circumstances, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. I became a functional zombie. A zombie who was able to keep 3 kids alive, who was able to keep a household running while serving in the military myself. But most of all, a functional zombie that was able to stay strong amid all the challenges that came into my life during those 18 months. Challenges that I had zero control over them, but that I knew I had to overcome for the well-being of my children. The bottom line is, Marielys the soldier was a very strong individual. But Marielys, the army wife, had to be an even stronger individual, and again, that's a job I was never trained for. But one that I proudly did so that my husband could go and serve his country without having to worry about anything other than the mission he was assigned to do. And for that, I can proudly say that I am not only an Army veteran, but I am also a badass Army wife.
Ottum, United States Army, 2005 to 2013. Water purification specialist. Nowadays I mentor kids and volunteer my time and do traumatic brain injury awareness and support the Wounded Warrior program. Game breaker. You know, sticks and stones may break my bones, but I'm here to get these benefits. Speaking of benefits, one time I went to the Air Force recruiter's office in Lakeland, Florida. To my surprise, not a single soul was in there. A bright orange piece of construction paper taped to the poorly taped to the inside of the glass front door read "closed" in black Sharpie. I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I can't understand how the United States Air Force is closed when we're at war with 2 different countries. Iraq, Afghanistan, and we still don't know what's jumping off in Syria. I had one option, and that was going back to Paisano's Pizza and Grinders. On my way back to my sun-baked black and blue 88 Tempo that my aunt gave to me, an ogre-looking giant army recruiter dashed out of his office, waving me down and said to me, "What do you want to do with your life? I saw you looking into the Air Force office. If you let me tell you what the United States Army can do for a man like you, we can talk it over, we can discuss this over lunch, and I'll buy. We can take my car." That sounded like sheer genius to me at the time. He told me to wait in his office while he got gas for the G-Jet. I waited in his office. In front of his oversized desk, I noticed how clean his office was. I was puzzled how a rough, tough soldier could have such a well-organized desk job. My curiosity grew as I waited for him to return with a full tank. My Tempo, the Bruise, as it's known to me, has only seen 3/4 of a tank on its best days. When we got in the car, he asked me where I wanted to go. I told him I'm not familiar with this side of town. What would he recommend? He said, I have a great idea. Let's go to a brand new place. I asked him, what is it? He responded, you'll like it. Why you asking so many questions? He said, get in the G-Jet with a serious voice. I walked over towards the back door and he chuckled, telling me to get in the front. I walked to the locked front door and he chuckled some more while unlocking the door. He was like, get in, man. The 93.3 FLZ top pop hit radio was playing through the stereo at a very loud decibel level. That was my least favorite station to listen to, yet I suffered through it because I'm here for those benefits. And lunch was long overdue. We pulled up to the unpaved parking lot of a freshly built Zaxby's. No logos on the building yet. We get out of the car. As I try to stand, I slipped on the rocks a little. I tried to make sure he didn't look. I tried to make sure I didn't look weak on my first soldierly encounter. I looked at the recruiter to see if he noticed, and of course he did. I wasn't sure how serious the almost falling in a parking lot was going to affect the recruiter choosing my course of training and job qualifications. We go into Zaxby's, and my mind was blown. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to order. I was stunned at the new glow of everything. It was a brand new Zaxby's. I haven't been inside a brand new anything. So being a brand new Zaxby's was like entering a mansion that serves chicken. I've only eaten at single wide, county renowned kitchens and Dad's skillet at home. I didn't want to look like a punk, but I ordered a kid's meal. I figured I'd order that to save him some money and increase my odds of better job qualification. He told me to go find a seat for us. I chose a seat right in the middle. That's where the open seats were. He had to sit in a special place with his back against the wall so he could see the entrance and exit. I thought it was an invisible war wound. You know, the kind of thing that lingers in your head long after the war is over. He asked, why didn't you go to college? You seem like a smart man. I replied, I tried college for a couple of weeks and it wasn't for me. Plus, the financial endeavor was way beyond my tax bracket. I asked him, how did you get to where you are in the Army? He replied, I started out as a light wheel mechanic, then through re-enlisting enough times I was offered a change of job as recruiting duty. My confusion increased greatly inside my frail 19-year-old mind. I didn't have a clue of how promotion, time of service, and job training all worked. He looked at me, but not as a friend, but with the same look Alonzo had at Officer Hoyt in the movie Training Day. He asked me, why you asking so many questions? I hadn't said anything up until that point. And I thought it through silently and replied, because this is all very new to me, as I waved my hand as if I was selling something on the Home Shopping Network. He could tell I was trying to joke. He attempted to laugh, but I could tell smiling was not his forte. I noticed he had recently got Army dental work done and was still feeling the after effects. I also realized laughing wasn't easy as it was before for him. Those thoughts made me reevaluate where I may be going and what I may have to go through in the military if I keep agreeing with this man. Then the Wu-Tang Clan song Cream came into my head. Get that money, dollar, dollar bills, y'all. For real. once we finished eating, we went back to his office and completed my extremely long packet. Long story short, I finally got those benefits. You see these shoes? Fresh out the VA. And they're the most comfortable shoes I have in my possession.
I served 6 years in the Army as a human intelligence collector. I currently work in a restaurant and attend school full-time with a major in journalism. Tip share. What is my reply supposed to be when someone says, "Thank you for your service"? I've come to just say thank you because I feel it's politer than just saying, "Yep." But really, what's the point? Most people have no idea what it means to serve and have no family members that have ever served. That's fine. I'm sure your life is full of its own stress and hard times. And quite honestly, I volunteered to go to war. I wasn't drafted and I didn't have to do it. Does that make my service more or less impressive? Well, it makes the younger version of me seem pretty naive. Maybe I was duped. I think I was just too lazy to get decent grades and go to college. So if you're going to thank me for my service, make sure you thank the kitchen staff next time you eat out at a restaurant. Thank the maid who tidies your hotel room, and thank the UPS driver that drops off your Amazon package. Lest you be labeled as a hypocrite. I don't want to be treated like a member of a special interest group. Veterans are people. They signed up for a tough job, but they knew, or should have known, what they were doing when they signed the dotted line. Everyone has worked a tough job, and yes, I know I hardly talk about my service, but you never ask. Do you expect me to spontaneously regurgitate it? I haven't heard you tell stories about what department store you worked in when you were in your early 20s. Veterans are not a shambling mound of fumbling psychopaths and drug addicts bent on squeezing every dime from the government. Some just want help. Do you know I was told by my psychiatrist that if I attended too much treatment, my benefits may be reduced? First of all, I don't declare benefits from PTSD, and secondly, what kind of administration penalizes its patients for helping themselves too much? Look, deployments are tough, and unless you spent your time in a bubble or you are a sociopath, you're going to come back with some form of PTSD. Now, PTSD is curable, either through treatment or just naturally. To say every adult has or has had some form of PTSD is not a stretch either. PTSD doesn't mean you dive under tables when a pen drops or you tackle every guy you see in a man dress. Now, the culture of the military does make it tough to come out when something is wrong with you. If you want proof, sit down with the most ostracized class of soldiers, sick call rangers, malingerers. But who came up with the idea that PTSD meant something is wrong with you? If everyone goes through trauma at some point in their life, isn't PTSD just part of being a person? So, why do we have to fly banners and claim we are fixing people when they were never broken? And why should a soldier feel bad about dealing with being a person and having feelings? It's really a public image that drives most of this vision and culture. You may not know this, but everyone in the military is also a person. And before, during, and after their service, they are also an American, just like you. Service members are not some alien race with their own culture and language. They just have additional culture and additional languages. Okay, let me tell you how it went for me. When I got back from Iraq, yeah, I was referred to this doctor and told I could go to the VA and talk to somebody if I wanted to. Well, that was fun when I got to the doctor and was told the VA wouldn't cover my physical therapy. But I digress. Ultimately, I didn't seek therapies when I should have. Coming back from a third world where large pieces of metal containing smaller pieces of metal are flung at you and may or may not explode over your head can be fairly traumatic. It can most definitely be hard to relate to civilians and the civilian world after a year of that. It might make sense to need a few drinks to loosen up in a social situation and relieve your anxiety a little. Quite honestly, isn't it expected that a 20-something-year-old would be hanging out at the bar on a Friday night or watching the hockey game with his bros on a Saturday night? And if you have a designated driver, even better. What about that one time you don't have a DD, your house is right up the road, and a couple of friends want to come over? Well, that happened to me. So no, doctor, I'm not claiming PTSD because PTSD is a result of my own bad choices. The Army didn't make me do it.
retired orthopedic surgeon and a never retired veteran. I was drafted into the Marine Corps in 1968 during the Vietnam War. My story is called If the Mountain Can't Come to You. It was a very cold, dark night. There were Marines spread out everywhere, in the beaches, the jungles, and the mountain. I tried sleeping on the beach, and it was freezing cold. My chief corpsman awakened me with an emergency call and told me that there was a Marine in the mountains with a distress call calling for help. We packed up our emergency gear, and 4 corpsmen and myself headed through the jungle up to the mountain. We got to the base of the mountain. It was easy to find directions because all you can hear in the middle of the night was, "Please help me, I'm dying. I need a medic." We began to climb the dark mountain. And I came upon a Marine in a fetal position. He was screaming with his hands across his abdomen. I grabbed his shoulders and I told him, "I'm the doctor, I'm the surgeon. My name is Dr. Sterling and I'm here to help." I gave him an injection of morphine and examined his abdomen. He was so tender over his spleen. And I asked him, "Do you have sickle cell disease?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "You're in a crisis right now, and your life is at stake. We need to get you blood and an operation." And my corpsman helped load him on my back, and we tied his hands and his feet with his shoelaces. I took him down the mountain as best I could, and at the bottom, we put him in a stretcher, picked him up, and started running to the beach. When we got to the beach, there was a bunch of Marines and the commander of the battalion, Lieutenant Colonel David Toomey.
"What's happening?"
"Sir, I have a Marine here in severe distress. He has sickle cell anemia and is in a crisis, and he needs to have blood and surgery."
"Set him up, and we can donate as much blood as he needs."
Are you kidding me? How am I going to set him up on a beach? These people have to be typed and crossed, and so does he. You don't just give him blood. And what do? Operate on him on the sand? There's no general anesthesia. I don't even have instruments, and there's no light.
"What do you suggest?"
I suggest calling in a chopper.
"How would they find us in the dark?"
Let me worry about that. I will take all responsibility. I then set the Marine on the beach by himself in the stretcher, surrounded him with 28 corpsmen and myself. As soon as I heard the chopper, I told them all to light up their little Zippo lighters, and the pilot immediately saw a circle of fire, lowered a steel cable with a hook on it, picked the Marine up, and took him back into the helicopter. They flew to Istanbul, Turkey, where he received several units of blood. They took him out of sickle cell crisis, and he didn't require an operation. He was later brought back in about 6 weeks, fit for duty and very happy. Thank you.
My name is Darrell Schaefer. I spent 23.5 years in the United States Army and came out and taught ROTC in the high school another 15 years. I'd like to talk to you about Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, which many young people go through. when they enter high school, because it is a high school program. My experience in the Army after 23 years left me with another choice to make, a new decision about where I would work and what I would do. I had been stationed in Chattanooga, Tennessee with the ROTC program and had had privilege to associate with the junior program in local high school. And I said, this appealed to me, and I said, I can do that. So after my retirement, I went for an interview with a local school so I could find out whether I was qualified to teach young people or not. The first part of this, being in a junior program, they must learn about military subjects. Part of that is drill, part of that is first aid, part of it is map reading, and part of it is what we like to call standing up in front of your peers and learning how to talk. This really allows them to establish a little confidence from what they're doing. And in 4 years they get promoted, they can get promoted to E2 if they happen to go in the United States Army and Marines as a member. Hopefully they'll develop some respect for our country and our flag. Remember that no one owes you anything. Give something back. Recently, one of my former cadets retired from the military after 22 years as a lieutenant colonel, which gives you some sort of pride about what we're doing with today's young people. Thank
you. My name is Cornelius Douglas. I recently graduated from Polk State College. I currently attend USF, and I'm Richard Ottum's non-medical caregiver. Today, I'll be reading on behalf of Abel Gonzalez. Abel is a 24-year Air Force veteran. He was a medic who had multiple deployments. My 9/11. It was already a scorching hot day. You would have never thought it was only mid-morning. It was a dry heat. The heat you feel when you open the door of a hot oven. You can feel the pores on your skin immediately open as sweat starts pouring out. Walking from indoors to outdoors puts such a toll on your senses. That dry heat. It made you have to forcibly take that initial breath, filling your nostrils and lungs with hot air. Air that had the stench of burning trash. The brightness of the sun was so brilliant that your squinting eyes watered to prevent them from drying out. You'd expect, as bright as it was outside, that the sky would be clear in a beautiful blue color. Not so. The sky was colored with browns, yellows, and streaks of black. Yep, a typical Iraqi day. The only thing that made any day bearable was calling home after a long night shift. How wonderful was it to hear the familiar voices of home, Mom, Dad, and Sissy. You could hear the worry in their voices, only to assure them that you were doing fine. There was also much pride in their conversation as they spoke. Was I now a responsible grown man and not that stupid, awkward kid I thought I was? Would I be having this conversation if I was not in the military? They must have heard a change in me that I was unaware of. Just another day, walking to my tent after a long shift and a call home. With each step, the sound of rocks crunching and shuffling underneath my feet. Only a few hundred more feet, and then I can get some sleep. I then heard that dreadful, unmistakable sound, the sound of incoming! But this time, it was a bit different. It made the hairs on my skin straighten and my heart race. I started to run for cover. Was it over? What felt like a split second must have been minutes because I was lying on the ground on my back. Why were all these faces looking at me? Everything seemed to be moving in slow motion, as if time was coming to a stop. but my sense was telling me they were moving with a sense of urgency. I tried to focus. Looks like a lot of them are medics. Yes, they're medics. And this loud ringing in my ears. I can't hear what these folks were saying. It sounded so muffled, like they were talking through a long tube. What was going on? Why can't I feel anything? I want to get up and tell them I'm okay, but I can't communicate anything. Am I in pain? Or am I numb? I'm so unsure of anything. Damn that sun. It's so hot.
Skillman. I was in the U.S. Navy from 1972 to 1976, 78. And since then I've worked here in Central Florida. I've raised 2 daughters who are grown and have a total of 6 grandchildren. And I'm having fun in Pet Voices. The 4th of July. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey. Titusville was located just north of Trenton along the Delaware River. 4th of July was a very special day, not just for the community, but especially for our family. It rivaled Christmas. My father, all year long, was an auditor for the state of New Jersey, spending every day just with figures. But for the 4th of July, he was assigned being the person in charge of the fireworks display. And for that one day, he let his artistic talent show. Months before July, we started receiving catalogs in the mail. They didn't have many pictures, but plenty of graphics, what the stuff would look like. Fascinated as a child, I would ponder through the catalogs and make up my own imaginary displays. Our community display, though, consisted of a combination of ground pieces and aerial shells. Shell is the word for the item that was fired out of a vertical pipe in the ground. High in the air, it would explode with colored stars and other pyrotechnic effects. A couple of weeks before the 4th, my father would get a notice that the shipment had arrived at the Railway Express station. So we, my father, brother, and I, would remove the seats from our VW microbus and head out. There we loaded everything and of course came right back home. It was kind of a special excitement riding on crates filled with gunpowder and explosives, all that kind of little boy stuff. Back home, we put everything into the garage and we started sorting out the shells. They were grouped according to size and fanciness. Just as bullets come in various calibers, pyrotechnic shells have different sizes. They are measured by their circumference. A 9-inch shell, about 3 inches in diameter. The 12-inch shell is 4 inches. In our community display, we used 9s, 12s, 15s, and 18-inch shells. Fanciness was simply an empirical judgment by my father. The shells were divided into follies, laid out on the floor so we could see how the whole display would go. We fired our shells one at a time. Everyone enjoyed the individual colors, the effects. The show lasted longer. Shells were repackaged into paper brown bags and numbered. It was there that I personally learned a lot about entertainment. My dad said that each volley of shells had to build to a crescendo, and then we'd have a ground piece, and we could build again in the next volley. The morning of the 4th was always a busy day. My dad had a flatbed trailer, and we hitched it up, and the first stop was behind the firehouse to pick up the assortment of mortars, the iron pipes placed in the ground to launch the shells. Next, we went to the lumber supply to pick up 20-foot long 2x4s and cinder blocks. We then unloaded the 2x4s at the back of the elementary school playground. They were used to support the various ground pieces. Up on a hill behind the playground, we unloaded the mortars. We would return later. Last stop, we moved the trailer back to the school, to the front of the school, and set it up on blocks. In the afternoon, it would be the reviewing stand used during the parade. Going back up the hill, we returned to the mortars. We dug the trenches to secure them. The mortars were pipes 2 to 3 feet long with one end securely plugged. They needed to be set about a foot into the ground, plugged end down, and the dirt firmly packed in around them. 3 trenches were dug, Bank A, Bank B, and the bigger finale. During the display, my dad would alternate from Bank A, Bank B, and back and forth. The finale was an explosion of color and sound that signaled the end of the night's display. The shells for the finale had to be set up early. They were launched too fast to be lit one by one, and they were much too close together. Shells were loaded into the mortars, first some color, then a big explosion, some more color and explosions, and alternating like that to the end. The fuses from each shell were spliced together sequentially to go off about every half second or so. And then we placed a tarp over the finale to protect it to the evening. In the afternoon, the town assembled for the parade. The route was along the front of the school. First came the baby parade, then the brownies, the Cub Scouts, drum and bugle corps, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, a float from Vacation Bible School, fire and rescue volunteers, long parade. My dad always marched in either his scoutmaster's uniform or with the fire department volunteers. Later in the afternoon, boat races would be held on the river, but our family walked home for a meal and a much-needed nap. At early dusk, we returned to the school playground, except my dad. He changed into his work clothes, dungarees, an old t-shirt, and the ball cap that he only wore for firework displays, his personal protection equipment. We picked a site for our blanket facing the rear of the playground, where all of the ground pieces had been set up. There was a rope preventing us from getting too close. The mayor presented the awards for the parade. There was a peanut scramble for the kids to get rid of all their built-up excitement. Perhaps there would be a band that would play until the dusk was dark enough. The welcome sign would be lit, and the crowd would settle down to watch as it burned out. The first round of aerial shells would come. The display continued, alternating between ground pieces and aerial shells. First the simple fountain arrangements on the ground, then the wheels, rats on wire, and ending with Niagara Falls. This piece simulated water falling with silver-colored fountains suspended from a rope. Because we set it up over the back fence, it became a tradition for it to burn off the weeds and vines that had grown there since last year. Up on the hill, my dad was very busy. One bag at a time, the shells would be loaded into a bank of mortars. Now, to fire a shell, you pulled off a little protective cover from the shell, touched your flare to the end of the fuse. You had a few seconds to retire promptly to a safe distance. Then the launching charge would explode and the shell would be shot up out of the mortar. As it traveled upward, an internal time delay fuse would fire the shell when it was sufficiently high enough. Oohs and ahs from the crowd. Then the fuse for the next show would be lit. The ground crew knew the count of each volley and then lit the next ground piece. But this was no resting time for my father. All the mortars had to be cleaned out, pulling out any burning embers, pieces of paper with a pole, using a nail stuck through it. After Niagara Falls came the finale and the good night sign. Tarp was rolled off, the master fuse was lit, and a safe distance was established. Ground literally erupted as shell after shell blasted from the mortars into the sky. One year I was helping my dad load mortars, and the ground crew lit the good night sign too early. That was the first time I ever heard my father curse. After the show came the traditional traffic jam. Local police directed the traffic, volunteer firemen solicited donations, kids fell asleep in the car. We were lucky. We could walk home to our house. The next day was spent cleaning up. Mortars had to be dug up and returned to storage, lumber back to the lumberyard, trailer parked behind the house, waiting for next year.
The day I met my parents. I remember the day I traveled outside of Texas for the first time like it was yesterday. That day, I woke up feeling a little weird, like I knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know exactly what it was. I remember how 1 minute I was surrounded by all my friends getting ready to take a nap, and the next, I woke up inside of an airplane. At that time, I was too young to understand what was happening. And since I was traveling as an accompanied minor, I really didn't have anyone I trusted who I could ask where was I going. I looked, and I couldn't see any of my friends. And that's when I started freaking out. I don't remember hearing Annie tell Joe that my new parents were going to be waiting for me at that new place. But I really didn't understand what she meant. The truth is, I really didn't pay too much attention to what she was saying. So I didn't know what she was talking about. Now I realize that I should have paid attention. Doing that could have prevented the agony that I was feeling during that entire trip. Yeah, that trip was a little too scary for my taste, guys. The good part was that after a while, I started feeling really tired. And without even trying, I fell asleep. And the agony of not knowing where I was going started to fade away to the point that basically I just slept the entire trip after that. Not bad for a first-time traveler, huh? After sleeping for almost 3 hours, I slowly started to wake up. And after I was fully awake, I remember listening to like a lot of noises. And after a while, I realized that the noises were related to the plane getting ready to land. At that time, I had no idea what was happening. But since the other passengers stayed calm, I assumed that everything was okay. The only problem was that at that time, is that I really needed to use the restroom. And there was no place for me to go potty. That made me really uncomfortable, guys. And there was a moment when I felt like screaming so that someone could take me potty. But I didn't. I have to behave, I kept telling myself, especially because I didn't want to get the lady who was next to me mad, you know? She was sleeping. So I just stayed there as quiet as I could, but wondering when was I going to be able to get out of that plane and go potty. And of course, to meet my new parents. Yes, just in case you didn't catch it earlier, I was on my way to meet my adoptive parents, the people who had signed a bunch of papers so they could adopt me. And I was really happy that I finally was going to be able to have a mom and a dad. But at the same time, I was really scared because I didn't know if they were going to like me or if their other kids were going to want to play with me. I remember how slowly the plane continued to descend until it finally landed. Oh boy, if you thought that getting on that plane was scary for me, knowing that I had to get out of it was even scarier. It has been so many years since that day, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I really didn't travel that much before I met my new parents, but traveling is something that, due to the military job, I had to do a lot. So much that I ended up getting used to it. Where have I traveled, you may ask? Well, I have traveled to more than 6 countries, which include Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Colombia, Africa, Dubai, and of course the USA. No bad for a tiny little dog, right? Oh yeah, in case I didn't mention it at the beginning, my name is Ottmum Federico. Ottmum Federico Morales Camacho. But you guys can call me Ozzy. I am an 11-year-old toy chihuahua. In those 11 years, I have traveled with my parents around the world while they served in the military. I guess that kind of makes me a military brat, right? Anyway, I have to go now. My dad is taking me to the dog park to play fetch. And I love playing fetch. Have a good day, everyone. Goodbye.
My name is Timothy Snipes. I served in the Marine Corps from 2005 to 2009. I served in Iraq from 2008 to 2009. Currently, I am a graduate student, a scientist, and a practicing martial artist. Time to go. Time to go! My sergeant came in the room and told me. I'm ready, I thought. We began to make our way to the airfield. When we landed in Maryland 7 hours later, my unit was treated to a welcome group of elderly people. They were warriors from a bygone era, but warriors nonetheless. We remained in this small airport for a couple more hours. Then we boarded our next flight. Next destination, Ireland. Ireland was special. It was the last time we'd be allowed any alcohol for the next year. After Ireland was Iraq. That's what I thought. Apparently Kuwait was our next stop. When we landed, it was, to say the least, hot. Hey, asshole! Someone yelled angrily. Okay, dickhead, act like you didn't hear me. There were Marines moving in every direction. So I did what I always do. I blended. Blending meant moving a lot of equipment, weapons, vehicles, and personnel very fast. This is called a working party. There's nothing fun about it. After our party was over, we waited, and then we waited some more, to the tune of about 14 hours, with about half that time being spent on an airfield in over 125 Fahrenheit. The next flight wouldn't be like the other flights. This would be on the C-130, not a civilian flight. Apparently the plane needed maintenance. After waiting for 6 hours in a cramped van, we finally boarded. The flight will last approximately 3 hours. Should be a breeze, I thought. Every other flight has been at least 6, assuring myself. As the flight was nearing its Iraqi destination, the pilot came on the intercom. We're going to be making an emergency landing. In a calm demeanor. I laughed. There's no way this pilot is this calm and collected for this iron coffin to crash. Okay, you have to be taught on plane crashes, I thought. Needless to say, I got a crash course, literally. The way down was a combination of vertical and air sickness, sprinkled with a touch of extra G-forces, just enough to turn my stomach inside out. Falling so suddenly and hitting the roadway felt like my stomach was pulled out of my mouth and thrown back in. With a loud thud, we landed, mostly intact. Once we exited the on-fire plane, the sandstorm proceeded to take over. One of our plane's engines continued to burn. As fire trucks and other ER vehicles sped towards the plane, we moved forward. The plane slowly disappeared, and the sandstorm took over the plane. We had no time to reflect and no time to look back. There was only the mission. And forward was our only direction. We were in Iraq now, and there was no turning back. For our next destination drive, we drive. We were taking a convoy this time. Our final destination was Fallujah. The convoy commander had ordered us to drive around the cities and through the desert roads. Less dangerous, but excruciatingly long. En route, we would encounter light resistance. Small arms fired, nothing I hadn't prepared for. Still, I thought, people really want to kill me that bad? Another 10-hour drive. Finally, we arrived at our destination, our home for the next year, Fallujah. When we were finally inside the wire, or the relative safe zone, I was greeted by my brothers. They had deployed 6 to 8 months before me, and I missed them and was glad to finally know they were still alive. When we all were together again, my good friend Corporal B said, "Hey man, guess what? War's over." Great, I thought. Boom! And I literally come from nowhere, no warning. We were being bombarded with mortar rounds. What lasted less than a minute seemed to last an eternity. Once the smoke had cleared, 2 Marines were killed. My first week in Iraq, I had another 9 months left. This was a new time for me. This was training. My life will be forever changed.
Hi, I'm Liz Nussmeier. I'm a 12-year Navy veteran. I spent my time as a shipboard welder and then later as a welding inspector. Currently, I'm a stay-home mom and I homeschool my kids, and I'm going to share 2 poems with you. I feel honored. What makes me feel honored as a veteran? Being among the ranks of all people, of all ages and all services through all time, who have served to defend American freedoms, I feel honored. Standing at attention when I hear the national anthem of this great country, I feel honored. Seeing and hearing Old Glory waving in the wind, I feel honored. Reminiscing about those days, looking at old photographs, swapping stories with fellow vets, I feel honored. When someone looks me in the eye and with a sincere heart says to me, "Thank you for serving," I feel honored. It is a privilege to be one of the select few who can say, I am a veteran of the Armed Forces of the United States of America, and I feel honored. To veterans everywhere, thank you for serving. I honor you. Wounded warrior. I met a wounded warrior, Sister is her name, crying on the inside, a smile on her face. No gun, no IED, she wasn't shot or maimed, but wounded in the battle, a warrior just the same. Sleepless nights, she relives the assault, bloody deep. She carries scars within her soul, memories to keep. Her war goes on inside her, walking wounded, some would say, but she will share her story, healing day by day. She's courage and she's valor. She's honor on my page. She's strength and she's resilience. Her story not erased.